here with an old school, old friend, awesome dude. Just so glad he hit me up the other day. He's been on the Convo Couch before. He's actually co-hosted when Fiorella went away at one point. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend Ankur Patel is here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's exciting to reconnect and talk about what's going on in the world. That's all I wanted to do. And now that I see you got another show going, glad to be on and talk about stuff that folks are interested in, hopefully.
This is going to be a good show. We got 201 of you out there, plus the Rockfin, which we have a couple dozen over there, and plus the Rumble. Guys, we want you to do us a favor. Our numbers have been growing on Twitter almost every single time we do a show. However, the YouTube, the Rumble, we need help over there. YouTube is going to always suppress our voices. We talk about Ukraine, Russia. We talk about Israel, Palestine. They don't want those real conversations going on. And also on today's show, Ankur is my co-host. We're going to have a guest later on. It's InfoWars Rob. Mm-hmm. So we're having somebody, and just imagine this, ladies and gentlemen. The first segment, we're going to talk about where we're at now to compare to where we were at then. Me and Ankur worked as activists together. We organized together with the Bernie Sanders campaign. We worked out of the Bernie Sanders diner. He ran for office. I supported him. He was on my show. We've been in the streets together, marching for Medicare for all, marching with teachers, marching with nurses, been at Black Lives Matter rallies together. We've done so many things together, from the American left, the synthetic left, the old school progressive, the progressives that I believe have been completely co-opted. Anybody decent has been shucking away. There have been some victories. You got some footholds here and there. Some of you guys are still fighting, doing your own thing, but the movement as a whole is so different now today than it was back then. Would you argue, yes or no, the progressive movement that we had has lost any type of populist mentality and is strictly just in an echo chamber right now, trapped? Agree or disagree? And Jamie, if you can put that up again, does the progressive movement have any populist roots to it, or is it in its own corner? Ankur Patel.
Yeah, I disagree. I'm going to say that the populist movement takes many paths. I think there is a whole path that we were a part of that's caught in this Democratic Party hamster wheel. Yeah, that's a Groundhog's Day that isn't as productive as we thought it would have been 6 years ago, or whenever it is that we decided to enter and do all of that. So there is definitely a component trapped in that. And I think that word progressive, what does that even mean, right? We can have that conversation, but the left, the movement, the people who are active and actually doing work continue to be active in different ways. You know, at their local level, I've been involved with all sorts of different electoral reform movements since then.
Okay.
You know, and then also other forms of work that carry the message and apply it to society, and in ways that we get paid. Okay. We can't be unpaid activists for campaigns forever. And I think a lot of people, because of the realities of the system we live in.
We're providing a service, and you should get paid for that service, and we should find out ways. Look, even if you don't agree with a lot of my ideology, you should find out a way to fund these shows, because we're not paid by the corporations to say certain things, to spew certain rhetoric or narratives, whatnot. But let's stick on this moment right now, and I hate to give you the odd man out, but where in the progressive movement, our progressive movement, we can define it's been, Nancy Pelosi calls herself a progressive, and she's not, ladies and gentlemen, but progressive. Bernie Sanders progressives who used to fight for Medicare for all and all these other things. Where in our progressive movement that's still there today, where do they have populist ideas? Where do they have populist
So I'll talk at two levels. At the federal level, you still have the squad that taps into these and makes press conferences and talks about it when it's opportune to continue to shepherd and co-opt and talk about the issues in a public way when it resonates. And are they making progress on it? No, because the 435 Congress people, and the way that the right disproportionately steers the whole ship there, while the left is only making a few
comments. Can you give me an example of
the
squad, though, talking about an idea that's a populist idea right now, that's not outside, that's not inside their own echo chamber? Because I would say the squad has been completely co-opted.
No, I don't want to get into the history, but I think eventually on these issues, when it's so obvious, they say something that's somewhat supportive and then they'll work on it. But at the local level and at Los Angeles level, where I think where we can actually make more of a difference at your local level, if you know the people, you know the system, who's actually running. Again, that's why I ran 3 times for 3 different offices in Los Angeles City. And this cycle, you can go, and I know where you're going to land on some of these folks as I rattle them off.
Go ahead.
But there's 15 city council members in Los Angeles City, right? Mayor, city attorney, city controller, 3 citywide offices, right?
Yes.
And so each of them has a different history and background. And right now, since 2016, since that first Bernie campaign, and then the 2020 campaign, when we saw it on the walls, right? I didn't end up spending nearly as much energy or effort or heart on that 2020 campaign as I did on the 2016 campaign, because you could see it on the wall, and you could see it on the wall.
What was the biggest difference there? Would you agree that it was the culture war issues that were now coming to the forefront, as opposed to it seemed more economical in 2016?
I think that did have a component of it, but I just, seeing the realities of how they did us with delegates against Hillary Clinton, like between this hodgepodge of clown car candidates, I was like, for a second you thought it was me Buttigieg who they rallied behind, but in the end it makes sense. They rallied behind Biden. They did the same kind of messaging and marketing, and Bernie fell into it. Bernie allowed it to happen, and he'll still talk about Joe Biden, his friend.
Yeah.
And so 6 years ago, or 2024, right? So 8 years ago in 2016, that energy when Bernie was fresh and new, and we hadn't had that conversation in public.
Yeah.
That was nice.
Well,
and then in 2020, when that conversation, and maybe you're right, I'm not sure about exactly how it shifted away from the economics of it to the class and culture of
at that time, that Donald Trump was the most racist, sexist president of all times. Instead of like, I'm going to go into West Virginia, I'm going to talk to coal miners, I'm going to talk to Trump voters, and I'm going to persuade them to vote for me, because on paper I'm going to make their lives better. I'm going to work for it was more of a workers movement and turned into a culture war movement. But also I would argue that in 2016 he had a lawsuit that he did not jump on, where the people in Florida, and this is led by Jarrett Beck and his wife, they got the Democratic Party. It was the people versus Bernie Sanders supporters versus the DNC, and they sued the DNC for a fraudulent case. They had them dead to rights. Bernie Sanders would not join that movement. They had so much evidence there. And what the DNC did, in fact, the lawyers said if they wanted to, the DNC has the right to go into the back room full of cigar smoke and pick whoever they want. I thought that was the biggest thing, because we could have some really real, true election reform. And he didn't join that. He let that fizzle out. So everything that was in play in 2020, all the mechanisms they used in 26, they were able to tilt that election. And if listen, I don't know where you stand on that, Ankur.
Yeah, I want to talk about.
I don't know if you really want to believe that Bernie Sanders lost to Joe Biden the way he did in the primary. I don't know if you want to believe that Joe Biden beat Donald Trump in the general. That's up to you. But I'm calling bullshit and hogwash. This guy couldn't fill my living room. He's a zombie. He's got no populist message whatsoever. But that's what I think one of the worst things about 2016 was compared to 2020. He didn't join to fight for fair elections.
Yeah. And back to 2016, when he turned his back and walked out of the convention without giving a clear message or direction or purpose, right? It splintered since then. And so
he said, brothers and sisters, as they were booing him, you have to vote for Hillary Clinton. He made that message clear. He capitulated.
Well, after that, right, in terms of jumping on into which aspect of the movement, right? So where are we then? Where are we now? Where are people caught up? And it's splintered. There's people that are started everything from our revolution, right? Bernie was a part of. The labor movement has come on strong in these last. That's definitely a part of what he touched on. The anti-war movement finally making some headway.
Where?
Maybe not.
Where?
But at least people are talking about the allocations. But then going back to the local level, where I think at the Los Angeles city level, outline kind of that, we have, and I know you're not going to agree with the number, three city council members who are working within the system after all these trials and tribulations of getting into power against body that is not in their favor, and making headway, doing little things here or there.
They're giving the people some nuggets here and there, some hope, whatnot.
And so each election cycle now, we're looking at adding new members to that specific city council to eventually gain that majority, so that we can do some of these electoral reforms that would be more inclusive of the people, engaging and responsive to the needs of the community, as opposed to the donors and the police state. Okay,
so when we do the election integrity section, I'll implore you to get your council member, the people running, to look at certain things. These are the reasons why I believe that you're not in office right now. People like Shahid Buttar are in office right now. People like Angelica Duenas, more than anything, are not in office right now, and that's because we need real election reform. And I've been able to see it in Latin America, socialist countries, and we'll get into that. I put my little thing there, but where is your head at with Bernie Sanders right now? We did talk about Bernie Sanders. I know that I was head over heels crazy for him. I loved him. We wouldn't be here today without him, right?
Exactly.
We're friends today. I have a whole new group of friends and activists and all this. But Where do you think he's at right now? Because there's something that really bothers me about Bernie Sanders, as it does the squad. They're all for this Ukraine-Russia war. I think it's disgusting. I think it's sick. I think there were children in the Donbass who were bombed, 14,000 hiding in their basement, and even Barbara Lee is not on board on this one as well. But where's your head? Not just that geopolitical issues and war issues. Where's your head at with Bernie now altogether? Because truly, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm sick of him. Every time he speaks, I wish he would just shut the hell up. You know, I wish he wasn't running for office again. I just got a text yesterday. He's running for office and he's asking for money for his Vermont run. Where are you at with Bernie Sanders?
Like you started with, I give him so much credit for the work that he has done as a U.S. Senator, as a movement candidate who tapped into energy, who articulated points that weren't articulated. He tapped into energy. He brought us together. He was part of the movement, and he still is in his own way, right? And that's what I'm saying. There's different aspects to the populist movement. People still follow him. People still hang on to his every word. When he has a nice speech, you know, it's still nice. It's nostalgic almost. And in the Senate, he's kind of he's I don't want to say as low as cog in the wheel, because he's still the one senator who calls out issues and votes against and tries to bring amendments and do all that stuff. He's still doing that. But, you know, as he gets older, and as he doesn't have strong supporters in the Senate to take up his flank or do anything like that, I think he was ahead of his time in a lot of ways, and then he got molded back into the arc of what's going on in Washington.
I think that was the kindest way to put Bernie Sanders movement right now, and Bernie Sanders himself. That was, you know what I'm saying, feel the burn up there. He's got it up there, and listen, it's a tough one. I can't stand the guy. I despise him. I think he was the worst thing. He abandoned his whole movement. He bent the knee. Hearing him talk on Israel-Palestine today, still waited so long, and almost like endorses what Israel's doing in a way. I mean, I hate this kind of like soft-handed approach from the squad and everybody else. AOC, one of her biggest first decisions when it came to geopolitics was flip-flopping on her vote to fund the Iron Dome after Nancy Pelosi gave her a little wag her finger. And she also said she would defer to caucus leadership on Venezuela. They've been terrible. Just recently, she said that the number one geopolitical goal is beating back Putin in Ukraine. It's like these people don't know anything what's going on. They didn't follow this. They don't know what happened in 2014. It's so
on foreign
bad.
Policy, right? The whole way that we approach it is so remedial. Again, we're going to talk about India later. But if you take trees from the forest, you look at the way that individual diplomatic decisions, priorities, funding that this country and its allies, NATO, the European, Israel, has gone about things. It's pretty, every single relationship and historical interaction deserves some scrutiny and some information that people don't know about, right? The way that who we funded, which coups we supported,
but it's all out there.
Political parties we supported with strategically timed policy and resource aid, so that
this is not anything new there. And this is the basic things that a Congress people should know. Encore, we talk about this all the time. If we're going to know sitting at this desk what the NED does through the CIA and all these covert wars, I mean, these should be known. It's just ridiculous that nobody's there. Even Barbara Lee has disappointed me when it comes to Ukraine, Russia. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we had the Minsk agreements that Vladimir Putin and the Russian Federation had on the table, trying to make sure that the Donbass stayed part of Ukraine, just getting ceasefires, saying stop funding these people, stop funding what we always do, the most radical of radical. You know about the Mujahideen. Do I have to talk about the Mujahideen? Do we know about Al-Qaeda, ISIS, all these groups that we fund? We did the same thing in the Ukraine by funding the Azov Battalion. Does that mean that all Ukrainians are Nazis? No, but there are Nazis in Ukraine. And a lot of them have been handing a lot of weapons to fire at ethnic-speaking Russians in the Donbass. I mean, we know about this through the CIA and the Iran-Contras. We fund the Contras. We do this all the time. This is not anything new, and the information's out there. It might take a day to figure out everything about it. It'll take you one good Saturday to get a good grip on about 10 regime change wars that the United States, through the CIA and their little other Mossad friends or MI6, have gone around, and they've done this at the behest, and you probably wouldn't agree, maybe you will, at the behest of the global corporations to have, grab all these resources. It's about resource extraction. It's about causing chaos in these countries so they can get these resources for pennies on the dollar, whether it be in the Congo, whether it be in Haiti, whether it be in Guatemala with the banana. I mean, this is like the history that we should know. And the fact that none of these people that we had talked about right here, the squad, Bernie, Barbara Lee, have even remotely been halfway decent, not even halfway decent.
So I'll touch on how all of that has been funneled into, say, the get corporate money out of politics, right? You talk about maybe I would or would not agree with this global corporatocracy directing international policies and politics and wars even. Well, you know, if you dig into that, it's clear that billion-dollar, trillion-dollar corporations get policy enacted over the will of indigenous or local people across the world. Now, which corporations? You could go back to the British East India Company, right?
Yeah.
You could go back to the Pope if you want to look at the Vatican as a and look at the laws inter caetera, right? Looking at the historical context of the economic system that we have now. Might is right, greed is good. The Western kind of imperial colonial framework, and then you look at, even take the step back and you look at the man, and there's so many layers to it, because there's so much history to who owns what, why do you own it, how did you get power over it, what social contracts did you agree to with the people, what military might did you use to exterminate or genocide people and take their territory and now it's yours, right? And so looking at
it almost seems like you do believe in that global cabal of sorts, but
I think it can be it may be as nefarious as backroom deals where they're agreeing to, I don't know if you say Fallout, right? This new series on Amazon about the video. I mean, like, I'm watching Amazon.
I heard about it, but I haven't seen it.
But all these dystopian futures where Armageddon happens, right? And there's like, you take your pick, like whichever branch you want, you can imagine. These conversations going on, and hopefully, again, as an optimist, as a person who believes in democracy, who's out there running for office, who's in the streets, who still believes, you know, I think we can do better. We can we can aim for the diplomacy. We can say that we can have enough for everyone if we stop investing in war and violence and trying to fight each other and not talk about the issues that we know would benefit the majority of people.
Yeah. And the thing I love about what you said right there is the fact that I don't even think you need to necessarily believe in democracy, right? I don't believe we have elections. I believe we have selections. But the fact that you're fighting for it, and we should never stop fighting for it. People like Pasta, you have such a doubt in our election system. You say it's so fraudulent and so bad, but yet you still vote. Why? Because they're not going to take that away from us. We should. That's me fighting for a better system, no matter what. How can I fight for a better system if I don't participate in it, even knowing that it's got a lot of issues with it? Finally, my last question to close up this section. I know some people are going to want to know, and I'm not going to need to put you on the spot again and be an asshole, but I'm going to put you on the spot and become an asshole. But I know you love me, so you'll forgive me. Are you one of those guys who think that it's okay, it's better to vote for Joe Biden over Donald Trump, or you're not voting for either one?
Yeah, I'm lucky to be in California where enough people are going to vote for Joe Biden, and this electoral college is going to go for Biden probably. So I'm not going to vote for either of them in this. If I was living in a swing state, I would have to think about it more. But I'm not, and I'm not going to, and good luck to you. And
can I tell you something?
That dilemma.
I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump either, but if you had a gun to my head and said I had to vote for Donald Trump or Joe Biden, I'd vote for Donald Trump. I really would. And I don't like Donald Trump at all, but I don't think there's any reason to vote for Joe Biden and the Democrats whatsoever. They're not working for the people whatsoever. Their censorship, their disinformation, this whole Nina Jankowicz, and now she's back again. And I mean, it's just ridiculous. And all these other people who control all these big tech companies and what they're trying to do and what Google does, it's so disgusting. I believe that the biggest issue we have is the First Amendment, and that's being taken away from us, suppression of speech. And, you know, Julian Assange still sitting in a prison, a free press. We don't have that anymore. And these are dangerous utopian ways. So I just want to talk about that. Guys, thank you so much. Any final thoughts? You want to say anything before we go to our first break?
No, I'm glad that you're doing this show so that we can't have these conversations.